There is a moment in every person's life when the pain becomes so profound, so personal, that it sears itself into the very structure of their identity. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare, no, it arrives quietly like a thief in the night, through a betrayal you didn't see coming, from someone you trusted, someone you loved, and suddenly everything fractures. The world you thought you knew becomes unrecognizable, and you're left staring into a mirror, wondering how it all came to this. What's most devastating isn't just the betrayal itself, it's the silence that follows. The silence of those who stood by and watched, the silence of the ones who knew better but did nothing, and the silence inside your own heart where hope used to live. That silence becomes a weight, a suffocating presence that follows you, a constant reminder that pain can come from the very hands you once reached for in times of need. You ask yourself, how could they? How could they look you in the eyes, knowing they held a knife behind their back? How could someone you opened your soul to, someone you would have walked through fire for, carve wounds so deep you still bleed when you remember? These are not just metaphorical questions. They are real, and they haunt the corridors of your mind, demanding answers, demanding justice. But here's a truth no one tells you when you're in the depths of that suffering. Pain is never wasted. Every cut, every wound, every betrayal, it leaves a mark, yes, but it also sets something in motion, an unseen force, a reckoning. The universe, or perhaps something even greater, does not overlook suffering. It does not turn a blind eye to injustice. It observes, it remembers, and it restores balance in ways we can't always predict, but in ways that are always inevitable. There is a concept, ancient, enduring, and undeniable, that every action carries consequence. Every lie they spoke, every manipulation they wove, every time they watched you suffer and felt nothing, those things are not forgotten, not by you and not by the universe that governs justice. There is a cost to betrayal, and that cost is paid in kind. You see, every cut they gave you wasn't just a wound. They wrote a debt that they will pay one way or another. Now, it's easy to feel powerless in the face of such wrong, to believe that because they walked away smiling while you crumbled, that they've won. But that's a lie. The truth? Every time they hurt you, they hurt themselves more. Every act of cruelty was a transaction, pain for pain. And while you felt the burn first, their turn is coming. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to chase revenge, because life has a brutal way of evening the scales. And when it happens, when justice finds them, it won't be dramatic, it will be precise, surgical. The very wounds they inflicted upon you will become their undoing. Every cut they gave you will bleed them dry, not because you willed it, but because that is how the balance of life works. Pain demands reckoning. Suffering demands consequence, and betrayal demands a price. So the question is not, will they suffer? The real question is, how will you rise while they fall? How will you transform your wounds into wisdom, your pain into power, and your scars into a testament that no cruelty can destroy you? Because while they bleed, you heal. And that perhaps is the greatest revenge of all. Betrayal is not forgotten. It's a seed of their own destruction. There's a certain kind of betrayal that doesn't just wound, it shatters. It shatters your trust, your confidence, your sense of reality. You remember the moment it happened, don't you? The moment everything changed, the words they said or didn't say, the lies they hid behind kind smiles, the sudden shift in their behavior, like you went from being their priority to becoming disposable. And the worst part? It wasn't from a stranger. It was from someone you opened up to, someone you believed in, someone you would have protected with your life. You trusted them. That's what makes it hurt so much. You gave them the best parts of you, the parts you don't just hand to anyone, your loyalty, your love, your vulnerability. And what did they do? They took all of that, used it against you. They twisted it, manipulated it, and then walked away as if it meant nothing, as if you meant nothing. You spent nights wondering what you did wrong, blaming yourself, questioning your worth, replay after replay of every moment with them, trying to find the red flags you missed. You carried their betrayal like a wound that refused to heal. You wore it like a second skin, and while you suffered, they lived. They smiled, laughed, moved on, untouched, unbothered. That's what killed you inside, the fact that they seemed to win. But let me tell you something they don't know, something they can't escape. Betrayal is not forgotten, not by life, not by the universe, not by God. Every act of betrayal is like planting a seed of destruction. It doesn't sprout immediately. It doesn't show signs right away, but in the unseen realm, something begins. Slowly, surely that seed grows, and one day, when they least expect it, it bears fruit. The same way they shattered your heart, their own lives begin to crumble piece by piece. They may look like they're thriving now, but underneath it all, there's a rot. That seed of destruction they planted with their own hands, it's growing inside them. It will show up in the loss of peace, in relationships falling apart, in trust slipping through their fingers, in sleepless nights haunted by guilt and fear they can't explain. You see, no betrayal goes unaccounted for. Life has a ledger, and every cut they gave you was a debt written in blood. They thought they got away with it. They thought they could hurt you and walk away unscathed. But the damage they inflicted wasn't just on you. It set their own downfall in motion. That's how betrayal works. It's self-inflicted poison. The moment they betrayed you, they betrayed themselves, their lies, their cruelty, their manipulation. It's a curse they placed on their own future. And you're still standing. Bruised, yes. Scarred, absolutely, but alive, healing, rising. And while they carry the weight of what they did, you carry the strength of surviving it. Every tear you shed, every sleepless night, every silent scream, it didn't go unnoticed. It was recorded, not just by life, but by the very force that restores balance. And that force is relentless. It doesn't forget, doesn't miss. This every betrayal was a seed, and while you were left bleeding, they were left with something far worse, a ticking clock. And when the time comes, they'll reap exactly what they've sown. Not because you wished it, but because that's how justice works. Your pain is a trigger for their karma. There's a pain so heavy, it changes the way you see the world. A pain so consuming that it seeps into your soul, and no matter how much time passes, the memory of it still feels fresh. You know the kind of pain I'm talking about. The one that comes when you're hurt by someone you never imagined would cause you harm. Someone whose presence once brought you peace, whose voice once calmed your fears, and now every memory of them feels like a blade, sharp, cold, and unforgiving. You didn't ask for this suffering. You didn't provoke it. All you did was care, give, trust, love. You showed up for them when no one else did. You were there through their storms, their mess, their chaos, and in return, you were discarded, blamed, made to feel like you were the problem, as if your love was too much, your presence too inconvenient. It's maddening, isn't it, to carry that pain in silence while they walked freely, untouched by the devastation they left behind. You wonder, does the universe care? Does God see? Does justice exist? Because in your eyes, they're winning. They're happy, living without guilt, while you're drowning in questions, in heartbreak, in silence. But listen closely. Your pain did not go unnoticed. It was not wasted. It was not in vain. The tears you cried, the nights you couldn't breathe from the weight of it all, the ache in your chest that no one could see, all of that triggered something beyond your understanding. Your suffering became a signal, a call to justice, a divine alarm that cannot be ignored. The universe, in its perfect balance, cannot overlook such injustice. It responds. Not always on your timeline, not always in your sight, but always with precision. And the moment they chose to betray you, to cause you harm with no remorse, they ignited a chain reaction. Your pain set karma into motion. Like a storm building quietly on the horizon, it gathers strength, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They think they've escaped consequence. They think their actions are buried, forgotten, erased, but you know what they don't? The pain you carry is the evidence of their debt, and karma always collects. It's not loud, it doesn't announce itself, but it's certain. Their peace will shatter, their joy will decay. They will feel the same heaviness they forced onto you, and it will be relentless. The beauty of justice is that it's not fueled by revenge, it's fueled by truth. And the truth is, they wounded a soul that meant them no harm. They took for granted the very person who would have done anything for them. And now life demands balance. The universe does not forget. Your pain is the proof, and their consequences are inevitable. So while you suffered, understand this, that suffering was not weakness, it was a trigger. It set justice on a path they cannot avoid. It placed your pain into the hands of a force much greater than them, and now it moves quietly, efficiently, with purpose, not just to restore you, but to confront them with every choice they made. Every wound you carry, it's a receipt, and they will pay. What they took from you will be taken from them. There's a unique kind of heartbreak that comes from losing something you never should have had to lose. Not because of death, not because of distance, but because someone you trusted, someone you loved, took it from you with full awareness of what they were doing. They took your peace, your joy, your trust, and perhaps even your faith in people. And the worst part, you did it like it was nothing, like you were nothing. You gave them a part of yourself that you couldn't get back. You gave them access to your heart, your thoughts, your world. You let them into the most sacred spaces of your life, the spaces no one else could reach. And with that access, they tore down the very things you had spent years building, your confidence, your hope, your stability. They robbed you of your ability to feel safe, to feel valued, to feel loved. And while you struggled in the aftermath, questioning your worth, battling with your mind, drowning in memories, they thrived. At least that's what it looked like. They laughed, moved on, acted as if they hadn't just ripped something irreplaceable from you. And in those moments of isolation, you couldn't help but wonder if there would ever be balance, if the things they stole from you would ever be restored, or if they would just keep taking, leaving you hollow and them whole. But what they don't know is this: the universe does not allow theft without consequence. What they took from you will not remain in their hands. Life has a brutal honesty to it. It gives and it takes with perfect justice. And when someone steals peace, they lose their own. When someone robs love, they find themselves alone. When someone breaks trust, they are condemned to live in fear, never knowing who will betray them next. What they took from you will be taken from them, but in ways that hit even harder, even deeper than what they did to you. Because you, despite the pain, kept your integrity. You remained true. You suffered, yes, but you didn't become like them. And that matters, because life responds to who you are in suffering just as much as it responds to those who cause it. They may seem untouchable now. Their lives may look full. Their smiles may appear genuine. But that's the surface. Behind closed doors, their reality is crumbling. The peace they stole, it evades them. The joy they ripped from your soul, it's replaced with emptiness in theirs. And the love they rejected or betrayed, they chase it now, desperate and unsatisfied, never able to find what they once had in you. And the most haunting part for them? They remember. They remember your kindness, your loyalty, your presence. And they know deep down they will never find it again. That knowledge will gnaw at them. That regret will bleed them. Every night they can't sleep, every relationship that falls apart, every moment of inner turmoil, it's all connected to what they took from you. They believed they won. They thought they could take from you without paying the price. But what they took was never truly theirs. And now life is taking it back, one piece at a time. Their comfort, their security, their future. It all unravels because theft leaves a trail and the universe always follows it. While you rebuild, while you heal, know this truth. They are losing what they stole, and nothing they do can stop it. They may appear to win, but their fall is certain. One of the most agonizing truths in life is that the people who hurt you often seem to prosper. You watch them from the sidelines of your pain as they go on with their lives, laughing, thriving, surrounded by friends, adored by others, and you wonder, how is this fair? How can someone cause so much destruction in your life, walk away without remorse, and still receive blessings? The sight of their success feels like salt in your wounds. Because while you suffer in silence, they shine under the spotlight. It's a cruel illusion, and it haunts you. It makes you question justice, makes you question your worth. It makes you feel abandoned, not just by them, but by life itself. Because in your eyes, they've won. They got away with it. They broke you, and instead of facing the consequences, they're celebrated. You carry their betrayal like a cross while they seem weightless, unburdened, untouched. And the pain of watching them succeed while you barely survive is a torment few understand. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The truth that life hides until the perfect moment. Their success is not real. It is borrowed, temporary, fragile. What appears as victory is a mirage, because no one escapes the consequences of betrayal. Not forever, not truly. The universe is patient, but it is not blind. And what it allows in silence, it will address in judgment. You see, their rise is often the setup for their fall. The higher they climb, the harder they crash. The louder they celebrate, the deeper their silence will become when justice catches up. Their comfort, their joy, their pride, it's all built on a foundation of deception and cruelty, and foundations like that don't last. They crumble, not in public, not always in front of you, but they crumble just the same, behind closed doors, in sleepless nights, in failed relationships, in hollow victories that bring no peace. That's where the unraveling begins. They may post their smiles, flaunt their wins, surround themselves with people who praise them, but inside they are empty, because you can't outrun the truth. It follows you, shadows you, waits for the moment when everything you've built begins to betray you the way you betrayed others, and it always comes, because no one escapes the law of life, that what you do to others will be done to you. And when it happens, when they face the same pain they once inflicted, it won't be gentle, it won't be merciful. Their fall is certain. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And the longer it takes, the more devastating it will be, because while you've been healing, they've been stacking the weight of their guilt, their wrongdoings, their lies. And eventually that weight becomes unbearable. It crushes them quietly, slowly, but completely. And in that moment, when everything they pretended to be collapses, you'll realize they never won. They just delayed the inevitable. And every cut they gave you, it becomes a wound in their own life, one they cannot heal. Your silence is more powerful than revenge. There's a moment after betrayal when rage burns hotter than pain, when everything inside you screams for justice, for retaliation, for the chance to make them feel a fraction of what you've endured. You imagine the words you'd say if given the chance, the truths you'd expose, the way you'd tear down their false reality and reveal them for who they really are. That fire inside you, it's real, it's justified, and it demands release. But instead, you choose silence. Not because you're weak, not because you've forgotten, but because you understand something they never will. True strength doesn't roar. It doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't need validation. True strength is quiet. It's the kind of power that watches, endures, and waits. It's the kind of power that knows life will always reveal the truth in time, without your help. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. They start to fall apart, not because you attacked them, but because they can't escape themselves. Without your words, your warnings, your revenge, they are left alone with their own guilt. And guilt is a prison far worse than any punishment you could ever give. It eats at them in the dark, when no one else is watching. It whispers to them in the quiet moments, reminding them of what they did, of who they truly are beneath the mask they wear for the world. You may think your silence is invisible, that it goes unnoticed, but It doesn't. Your absence is louder than any confrontation. The space you leave behind echoes in their life. Every time they look around and realize you're not there to support them, defend them, love them, they feel it, the loss, the weight, the realization that they destroyed something they'll never get back. And the world sees it too, slowly. People begin to notice the cracks in their facade, the lies that no longer make sense, the inconsistencies in their story. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their truth to everyone around them. And while they scramble to maintain control, to bury the damage they've caused, it becomes impossible, because what's done in darkness always comes to light, and your silence is the light that exposes them. They wanted you to break. They expected you to retaliate, to chase them, to give them the satisfaction of knowing they still had control over you. But instead, you walked away, you rose above, and in doing so, you stripped them of their power. Nothing terrifies a betrayer more than being ignored, than realizing that the person they tried to destroy no longer cares enough to fight back, because that silence, it's not empty. It's filled with dignity, with self-respect, with unshakable strength. It's filled with the quiet knowledge that you didn't need to destroy them, because they're destroying themselves. Every lie they told, every act of manipulation, every cruel word, it's collapsing in on them. And while they bleed internally, you heal externally. Your silence is not weakness, it is power, and it speaks louder than any revenge ever could. Every wound they caused will mirror back on them. There's a law written into the fabric of existence, a truth so profound, so absolute that no one escapes it. Whatever you give to others, the world will give back to you. Not always in the same form, not always in the same season, but in equal measure. And when someone wounds you, deliberately, coldly, repeatedly, they're not just inflicting pain on you, they're setting the terms of their own downfall. Because life has a mirror, and every action, every intention, every cruelty, it reflects. Think about the wounds they left on you, the emotional scars, the sleepless nights, the anxiety that crept into your soul, making you question your worth, your purpose, your identity, the way they twisted your kindness into weakness, the way they made you feel like you were too much or not enough. That confusion, that heartbreak, the isolation, you didn't deserve any of it. And yet you lived through it, carried it in silence, and wore it like invisible armor. They thought you'd never heal, that the pain would crush you, that you'd fade into nothingness, forgotten and broken, while they moved on, untouched by the wreckage they left behind. But they were wrong, because the pain didn't destroy you. It sharpened you, and now the wounds they caused are turning back on them. That's how life works. That's the justice no one can escape. You see, there's no such thing as a clean escape. No one walks away from cruelty free of consequence. The pain they buried in you is rising to the surface in their own lives, through failures that can't explain, through relationships that unravel without warning, through a gnawing emptiness that no success or distraction can silence. They thought they could move on unscarred, but every wound they gave you is now bleeding in their own soul. And it's not just emotional, it's spiritual, deep. It's the kind of pain that wakes them at 2 a.m., the kind of regret that hits in the quiet moments when the world stops and they're alone with their thoughts. That's when the mirror shows them their own reflection, not the mask they wear for others, but the truth, the selfishness, the lies, the betrayal. And it breaks them slowly, day by day, because they're not just facing karma, they're facing themselves. Imagine this: every time they hurt you, a wound appeared on their future. Every insult, every lie, every moment they abandoned you in your time of need, it became a marker, a point in time where life would bring the pain full circle. They thought they could rewrite the story, act like none of it happened. But life remembers. Your suffering is engraved in the timeline of their destiny, and now they are living the chapters they wrote with their own hands. Here's the part they never expected. The mirror doesn't just reflect what they did, it amplifies it. Because you were innocent, you meant well, you loved them. So when they feel the pain now, it hits harder. There's no justification, no defense, just the truth that they destroyed something pure, and now everything they touch turns to ash. Not because you cursed them, not because you sought revenge, but because the universe demands balance. And what about you? You're healing, slowly, yes, but surely. You've found strength in your scars. You've rebuilt your spirit from the ashes. And while they bleed internally, you rise externally. That's the paradox of betrayal. The one who was meant to be destroyed becomes indestructible, and the one who caused the pain becomes the victim of their own choices. So every time you feel that familiar ache, every time the memories resurface, remember this. They're feeling it too, in ways they can't describe, in ways they can't escape, because every wound they caused you has returned home, and now they're the ones bleeding. Justice does not sleep. It strikes when least expected. There's a strange comfort people find in delay. Those who inflict pain often believe that because justice didn't strike immediately, it won't strike at all. They misinterpret silence as safety. The absence of visible consequence feels like freedom to them. They go about their lives confident, careless, certain that what they did is buried, forgotten, erased by time. But time does not erase truth. It reveals it. You see, justice doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it's quiet, patient, and precise. And while they walk through life oblivious, believing they've escaped the weight of their betrayal, justice is watching, calculating, waiting. It does not forget the nights you cried yourself to sleep. It does not overlook the days you walked through in a fog of heartbreak. Every moment of your suffering is remembered, not just by you, but by a force greater than you, and that force does not sleep. They thought they got away with it, that because they weren't struck down immediately after betraying you, the slate was clean. But that's the fatal flaw of the betrayer. They assume silence means immunity. What they don't understand is that the wheels of justice move in silence. The longer it waits, the heavier it hits, and when it hits, it's devastating, because it comes when they least expect it, when their guard is down, when their life seems to be thriving. Imagine this. They've built a new life. Maybe they've started a new relationship, gained social status, earned wealth, surrounded themselves with admirers. From the outside, it looks like everything is perfect. But then, without warning, everything begins to unravel. A sudden loss, a betrayal from someone they trusted, a collapse of something they believed was secure. And in that moment, they feel a pain that mirrors exactly what they once inflicted upon you. That's justice. That's balance. What makes this justice so powerful is its timing. It strikes in moments of false peace, in moments where they feel untouchable. That's the irony. They're most vulnerable when they believe they've won. And life knows this. It waits until they are confident, until their pride is swollen, until they believe they're safe, and then it dismantles everything, piece by piece. And here's the deeper truth. They know it's coming. Deep down, beneath the bravado, beneath the distractions, they sense it. That uneasy feeling, that gnawing fear, that inability to find true rest, it's justice whispering, reminding them that no one escapes what they sow. They may not show it, but they carry the weight of their actions, and it gets heavier with time. That's why they can't sleep at night. That's why they seek constant validation, constant noise, constant distraction, because the silence terrifies them. In the silence, the guilt speaks, and in that guilt, they feel the storm approaching. Justice does not need to announce itself. It doesn't need to be dramatic or public. Often it works behind the scenes. Quiet breakdowns, personal failures, emotional chaos, the very things they wished upon you, they begin to live them. And there's no escape, no shortcut, no way to undo the damage they've caused, because it's their turn now, their season of suffering. And you don't have to lift a finger. You don't need to fight, to scream, to demand payback, because justice is fighting for you. It has never stopped. Every wound you endured, every betrayal, every silent scream, it was all fuel for the fire that now consumes their peace. And the beauty of it all? You're not the one burning anymore. They are. Because justice never sleeps, and when it strikes, it bleeds them dry. You've carried the weight of their betrayal long enough. You've lived in the shadow of their actions, questioning your worth, doubting your strength, wondering if justice would ever find its way to you. But now you know, justice was never absent. It was simply gathering strength. Quietly, deliberately, it was preparing to do what you could not. And now the scales are tipping, and you don't have to chase revenge. You don't have to scream your pain into the void, hoping someone will hear it. The universe has heard it. God has seen it. And the pain you endured has not been in vain. It became the catalyst, the spark that set their downfall in motion. Every cut they gave you is bleeding them now. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment they thought they broke you, it's all returning to them, not as punishment, but as truth made manifest. And as they fall, you rise, not with hatred in your heart, but with power in your spirit, because you survived, you endured, you healed, and now you stand taller than ever before, stronger, wiser, unbreakable. Their actions no longer define you. Their betrayal no longer chains you. You are free, while they are bound to the consequences of their own choices. So walk forward, not in fear, not in anger, but in strength. Let them bleed. Let justice do its work. And you live, you thrive, you become everything they tried to destroy and more. Because in the end, your pain became your power, and their cruelty became